You think you know your son. You think after your husband is gone, you at least have a family. I thought I was building my life for my boy. I spent 30 years creating everything from nothing. Until one Tuesday at the bank, I learned I wasn't just building it for him. I was building it for the secret wife he just married. The woman already trying to put her name on everything I own. My name is Eleanor Vance. I'm 58 years old, a widow, and I took early retirement from my executive-level job at Apex Solutions, a tech consulting firm I helped build. I was at my neighborhood bank, the Chase branch in Lincoln Park, on that damp Tuesday. The sky was the color of dirty slush, and the air inside the bank was too warm, smelling of wet wool and floor polish. I was just there to make a routine transfer, something I did on the 15th of every month. The first sign that the world was tilting was a young woman named Kayla. She was new, with nails painted a bright, optimistic blue that didn't match her suddenly pale, confused face. She tapped at her keyboard, frowned, and tapped again. "Mrs. Vance," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "There seems to be a little problem with your account access." I sighed, managing a tight smile. "A systems glitch, I'm sure." I was patient. I've dealt with multi-million-dollar system failures. A teller's frozen screen didn't faze me. I glanced out the window, past the armored glass, and thought about the pot roast I was planning for dinner. Mark, my son, was coming over. He was 30, and I still worried he wasn't eating properly. "Eleanor," I turned. Mr. Harrison, the branch manager, was standing by the entrance to his glass-walled office. I'd known him for 20 years. He'd approved my first business loan, sent a floral arrangement when my husband passed. He wasn't smiling. His face was set in that grim, professional mask that means bad news. "Could you join me for a moment?" The polite sterility of the bank felt suffocating as I followed him. The click of my heels on the marble floor sounded too loud. He closed the door, and the muted hush of the bank disappeared, replaced by the hum of his computer. "Please, sit." He didn't sit himself, not right away. He fiddled with a pen. "Eleanor, have you made any legal changes to your assets recently? Updated any paperwork?" "No," I said. "Nothing, just my taxes." "Why?" He sat down, his chair sighing under his weight. "Because last week we received a file, a power of attorney, and a subsequent request to add a name to your primary checking and savings accounts." He looked at me over his glasses. "The request was from a Brianna Vance." I laughed. A short, sharp sound. "Harrison, you must be mistaken. I don't know anyone by that name." The words felt strange in my mouth. "My son, Mark, isn't married." He just watched me, his expression full of a pity that made my skin crawl. He slowly, deliberately, turned his monitor to face me. "This was filed in Clark County, Nevada, 3 weeks ago. It was a scanned copy, slightly blurry, but the names were perfectly clear. A marriage certificate, Mark Vance and Brianna Cole. Below it was the legal request, filed by a law firm I'd never heard of, to add Brianna Vance as his spouse to my accounts, as co-owner. The room began to swim. I gripped the armrests of the chair. He didn't tell me." "Eleanor, there's more," Harrison said, his voice gentle. "The POA, and this request. They didn't just try to access the liquid accounts. They specifically attempted to draw on your home equity line of credit." The breath left my lungs. The HELOC. My house. The house I owned outright. The house I had planned to leave to Mark. They weren't trying to join the family. They were trying to loot the estate. They didn't just want my money. They wanted my home. A hot, prickling wave of rage washed over me, so strong it left me dizzy. I felt the blood pounding in my temples. The room was too hot. The air too thin. "Eleanor." Harrison's voice was distant. "Are you all right? Can I get you some water?" I held up a hand. I closed my eyes for 1 second, took a single, deep, shuddering breath. When I opened them, the fog of hurt, the shock, the confusion, it was all gone, replaced by a cold, brilliant, diamond-hard clarity. They thought I was an old woman, grieving, retired, soft. They thought I was a fool. "Mr. Harrison," I said. My voice was calm. It didn't tremble. "I want you to freeze these accounts. All of them. Put a hold on every asset tied to my name. Effective immediately." He nodded, his fingers already flying on the keyboard. "Done?" "Good." I stood up, my back straight. "Now, I need the name of a lawyer, an estate lawyer, not a friendly one. I want the best shark in Chicago." I walked out of the bank and did not go home. The pot roast was forgotten. I sat in my car in the parking garage, the smell of damp concrete filling the air, and I dialed Mark's number. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. A third time. Voicemail. He was screening me. He was on his secret honeymoon, probably checking his account every hour, waiting for the money to appear. The pain that had clenched my chest just moments before didn't fade. It crystallized. It turned from a fragile, broken thing into a weapon. My next call was to the number Harrison had scribbled on his business card. Sarah Jenkins. Her office was in the Loop. All glass and steel. I was there in 20 minutes. Sarah was in her late 40s, dressed in a severe grey suit, with an office that overlooked the river. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered a pen and a notepad. "Tell me everything," she said. I did. It took less than 10 minutes. She listened, her face impassive, only nodding. "The marriage certificate is real," she said when I finished. "But the power of attorney is almost certainly fraudulent. Either a forgery or signed under duress, though that's harder to prove. The attempt to access your accounts, especially the HELOC, is a felony. Bank fraud. We have them. I don't want to have them, Ms. Jenkins. I want to stop them." "Good," she said, a small, tight smile appearing. "Suing is slow. It's messy. They'll counter-sue. They'll drag it out. We don't sue yet. We cut them off." She laid out the plan. It was brutal. It was beautiful. "Your son is currently residing in your home. Correct the brownstone in Lincoln Park." "Yes," I said. "He lives there." "Not for long." Step 1. We left her office and went straight to the Cook County Recorder of Deeds. In 35 minutes. I had signed a quitclaim deed. I, Eleanor Vance, transferred ownership of the brownstone, which I owned free and clear, from my name to the Eleanor Vance Irrevocable Trust. Step 2. The beneficiary. "Who do you trust?" "Eleanor," Sarah asked me. Implicitly, I thought for a moment. "My sister, Diane. She's a teacher in Oregon." The paperwork was drawn up. The sole beneficiary of the trust was Diane, with a specific clause, written in cold, clear legal language, explicitly excluding Mark Vance from any present or future benefit. Step 3. The money. We went back to a different branch of my bank, this time with Sarah at my side. I met with a private banker. I liquidated 2 large yield portfolios and transferred every liquid asset I possessed, my retirement savings, my stocks, my emergency funds, into the new trust. The only thing I left was $500 in the checking account they had tried to access. Let them fight over crumbs. Step 4. The locks. Sarah made the call. A private, bonded security firm. We need a full residential lock replacement and system update. Now. They met me at the brownstone at 4 o'clock. Mark's car was gone. Of course it was. They were off celebrating their new life, funded by my old one. It took the locksmiths 2 hours to change every lock, including the garage, the side door, and the old iron gate to the garden. They installed a new alarm system, the code known only to me. Step 5. The evidence. Go inside. Sarah had advised me. Go into his room. You are the owner of the house. It is not a violation of his privacy. Find out what we're dealing with. I stepped into my house. It felt different. Colder. I went upstairs to the 3rd floor, to Mark's old room. It was messy, but the mess was new. Women's clothes were mixed with his. An empty champagne bottle sat on the dresser. I opened his desk drawer. It wasn't hard to find. They were arrogant. They were sloppy. A stack of red-stamped envelopes. Bills. All addressed to Brianna Cole. At an apartment in River North. And then, slipped inside a folder labeled wedding printouts from various Las Vegas casinos. Statements of debt. Markers. She owed over $80,000. This wasn't a marriage. It was a buyout. Mark wasn't in love. He was a co-conspirator, trying to pay his new wife's gambling debts with my house. I felt nothing. No, that's a lie. I felt a profound, freezing calm. I took pictures of everything with my phone. My last act was a formality. I took the legal notice Sarah had printed for me, a 30-day eviction notice, posted on behalf of the trust, and I taped it squarely to the new, freshly rekeyed, solid oak front door. I went to a hotel. Not just any hotel. I checked into a suite at the Peninsula. I was done. The fortress was rebuilt. The gates were locked. Now, I would just wait for the enemy to realize they were on the outside. 3 days passed. I did not spend them weeping. I spent them at the Peninsula, in a suite overlooking the water tower. I slept for 8 straight hours, the first time in years. I ordered lobster thermidor from room service and charged it to the new account that only I controlled. I was disengaging, one thread at a time, from the person I used to be. The pain was still there, a hard knot in my chest, but it was no longer grief. It was fuel. I was simply waiting for the inevitable. On the 3rd night, Friday, my phone buzzed on the marble nightstand. It was not a call. It was a notification from the new security app I'd had installed. Alert, 8:17 p.m. Failed key entry at front door. A minute later, alert, 8:18 p.m. Failed key entry at front door. They were home from their honeymoon, trying to use the keys that were now useless pieces of metal. A moment later, the phone rang. The name Mark flashed on the screen. I let it ring 3 times. I took a slow sip of the chilled champagne I had ordered precisely for this moment. Then, I answered. I said nothing. Mom, where are you? His voice was high, frantic, laced with an irritation I knew well. There was no sadness, no worry, just pure panic. We're at the house. The key won't work. There's a lock on the gate and a notice on the door. What the hell is going on? Did something happen? Are you okay? I let the silence stretch, just long enough for his breathing to get hitched and desperate. "Hello, Mark?" I said. My voice was unrecognizable, even to me. It was low, cold, and perfectly steady. "I imagine you should be asking your wife that question. Brianna, isn't it?" A sharp, choked sound, like he'd been punched. "Mom, congratulations on the wedding, by the way," I continued, examining my fingernails. "A Nevada wedding. How efficient." "Mom, I was going to tell you," he sputtered, the lies already forming. "Mom, it's freezing out here. It's starting to rain. Just let us in. Open the door." "I'm not there." "Mark, what do you mean? You're not there. Where are you? Give me the code for the new alarm." "And," I said, as if he hadn't spoken, "it is not your house anymore. It is not even my house. As of 3 days ago, the brownstone, its contents, and the surrounding property belong to an irrevocable trust." A trust? What are you talking about?" "You and your wife," I stated, "have 48 hours to contact my attorney, Sarah Jenkins, to schedule a supervised appointment to retrieve your personal, non-gifted belongings. Her card is taped to the eviction notice." There was a muffled sound, a scramble, and suddenly I could hear him yelling at someone else. "He's not. I don't. She's—" And then a new voice. A woman's voice, sharp and venomous, suddenly on speakerphone. "Tell her. Mark. Tell her she can't do this. We have rights. Tell her about the POA. Tell her we have power of attorney. You idiot." A small laugh escaped my lips. It was a dry, ugly sound. "Ah, Brianna? I'm so glad you joined the call." She was silent. "You mean the fraudulent power of attorney?" I asked, keeping my voice light. "The one you filed with my bank, forged or not. My lawyer and the Cook County District Attorney's Office are very, very interested in discussing that document with you. Attempted fraud against the elderly, bank fraud. Those are felonies." Dead. Silence. The only sound on the line was the wet Chicago wind. The bravado, the panic, the entitlement, all of it vanished, sucked into the black hole of what I had just said. They weren't just locked out. They were caught. They had walked right into the trap I had set with their own greed. I let them hang in that silence for 10 full seconds. "Good luck finding somewhere to stay, children," I said softly. "Do not call this number again." I pressed end call. I blocked his number. I blocked his new wife's number. I stood up and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window. Below me, the city lights on Michigan Avenue blurred like diamonds. I finished my champagne. It tasted like victory. It was predictable. He was weak, and weak people always follow a script. The next morning, I was in the hotel's lobby. The lobby, a grand, quiet space where people spoke in hushed tones over $500 afternoon tea. I was drinking black coffee. He must have guessed I'd be somewhere like this. Somewhere I felt safe. He didn't see me at first. He burst through the revolving doors, his hair wet from the rain, his coat rumpled. He hadn't shaved. He looked frantic, his eyes scanning the room, landing on me. Relief washed over his face, quickly replaced by a practiced, crumbling despair. Brianna was not with him. This was the good son performance. Act 1. He rushed over, nearly tripping on a priceless rug, and collapsed into the velvet chair opposite me. "Mom, thank God." He reached for my hand. I moved it to lift my coffee cup. "Mark," I said. It was not a greeting. "Mom, please." he whispered, leaning forward. You have to listen to me. I am so sorry. I wanted to tell you. You just didn't. I finished for him. I love her, he insisted, his voice cracking. This was the opening plea. I love her, and she loves me. She's not good with money. I didn't know, I swear to you. I had no idea she filed those papers. She must have found the documents. She thought she was helping. The lie was so bald, so insulting, that I felt a fresh wave of ice settle in my veins. Stop, I said. My voice cut through his rehearsed speech. He flinched. Stop talking, Mark. I went to the house. I went into your room. I found the statements, the casino markers from Vegas, the letters from collection agencies. I leaned in, keeping my voice low. She owes over $80,000. Mark, you didn't just not know. You were actively trying to steal my home to pay a gambler's debt. You knew. His face crumpled. The actor was moving on to Act 2, the manipulation. The tears came on cue, welling up in his eyes, tracking down his unshaven cheeks. Mom, how can you say that? He choked out. How can you be this cold? My whole life, Dad's gone. He hit the low blow, as I knew he would. Grandma is gone. It's just us. It has always been just us. Are you going to throw away your family, your only son, all for what? For money, for a house? He was weeping openly now, a 30-year-old man having a tantrum in a luxury hotel. People were starting to look. I did not care. I leaned forward again. So close he had to stop sobbing to meet my eyes. No, Mark. I am not throwing away my family for money. I let the sentence hang in the air. You threw me away for Brianna's money. You made a conscious decision. You chose to betray the person who gave you everything, for a woman who has nothing but debt. You chose. Now, you will live with that choice. The tears stopped, as if by a switch. The desperation was real now. The mask was off. But where will we go? What are we supposed to do? My credit cards, they're not working. They're all locked. I know, I said. I reported them stolen. Brianna tried to use one at a gas station. When a criminal tries to access your accounts, you lock down all associated assets. That's just smart planning. Mom, you can't. We're homeless. That is the consequence of your actions. I reached into my purse. For a second, a flicker of hope lit his eyes. He thought he'd won. He thought I was reaching for a checkbook. I pulled out a single bill. $100. I pushed it across the polished mahogany table. This is for a taxi, I said. Take it and go to a shelter. You are 30 years old. It is long past time you stood on your own. He stared at the money, his face contorting with humiliation. And Mark, I added, my voice soft. A final piece of advice. He looked up, his eyes dead. I had my lawyer run a full background check. You should know who you sacrificed your family for. Did you know Brianna has been married 4 times before you were? All of them were men with significant assets and, in 3 of the 4 cases, an elderly mother. You weren't her partner? Mark. You were just the next mark on her list. The blood drained from his face. That, I realized, was the one thing he genuinely did not know. He thought he was the shark, the one in control, managing her. He was just the latest fool. He didn't speak, his hand shaking. darted out and grabbed the crumpled $100 bill. He shoved it into his pocket. He stood up, unsteady, and walked out of the lobby, past the staring faces, a defeated man. I watched him go. This wasn't over. But battle one was won. I didn't stay at the hotel. I went back to the brownstone the next day, not as a resident, but as a landlord inspecting a property. The silence was absolute. The eviction notice was still on the door, untouched. They hadn't dared to return. I went upstairs, back to Mark's room. The smell of stale champagne and his wife's cheap perfume hung in the air. The discarded clothes, the empty bottle, the messy bed. It was a scene of juvenile, arrogant celebration. I looked at the room. My son, a 30-year-old man, had occupied a room he never had to pay rent for, and I felt nothing but a cold distaste. I didn't touch a single thing. I went downstairs, took out my phone, and called a professional biohazard and junk removal service. "I need a full clean-out of an adult bedroom," I told the dispatcher. "Yes. Everything? Clothes? Furniture? Mattress? Strip it to the walls." They came 2 hours later in a large, unmarked truck. I sat in the living room, drinking tea, and listened to them hauling away the remnants of my son's life in my home. When they were finished, the room was empty, sterile, and ready to be painted. I called a realtor that afternoon. "I want to sell," I said. "Fast. I'm not interested in a bidding war. I'm interested in a clean break. Price it to move." The brownstone, my home for 30 years, was just an asset now, and it was a tainted asset. It was full of ghosts, the ghost of my happy marriage, the ghost of my child, the ghost of the life I thought I had. I would move to the Gold Coast, into a fortress in the sky, a modern penthouse with a doorman and security I didn't have to manage myself. My next meeting was with Sarah Jenkins. "We need to redo the will," I said, "and the trust, completely." We spent the afternoon drafting the new documents. My previous will, the one that left everything to Mark, was shredded. The new one was ironclad. My sister Diane's children, my nieces, would have their college educations paid for. The rest, the bulk of my estate, would go to a charitable foundation I was establishing in my late husband's name. A foundation dedicated to helping families, ironically enough. Mark was not mentioned, not even to be explicitly excluded. He was simply, in legal terms, erased. I was signing the final documents when a thought struck me, a loose thread I hadn't pulled. "Sarah," I said, "where did Mark meet this woman?" "I don't know. Does it matter?" It might. I thought back. Mark had been at Apex Solutions for 5 years, a job I had gotten for him, an entry-level position he'd never bothered to advance from. I think they met at work, at Apex. The name hit me. Brianna Cole. She was a former employee. I was sure of it. I left Sarah's office and made another call. David Miller. He was the current CEO of Apex Solutions, a man I had mentored, a man who had taken my place. We were still friends. "David, it's Eleanor." "Eleanor. What a surprise. How's retirement?" "It's busy," I said. "David, I need a favor, and it's a sensitive one. It has to be off the record, from one executive to another." His tone shifted. "Of course. What do you need?" "I need you to look into 2 people. One current employee, Mark Vance." There was a hesitant pause. "Your son?" "Yes," I said, my voice flat. "And one former employee, a woman named Brianna Cole." "Brianna Cole?" David repeated. That name sounds familiar, and not in a good way. Let me make some calls. Eleanor. I'll get back to you in a few hours. He called back in just one. His voice was furious. Eleanor, you'd better sit down. Brianna Cole was terminated from Apex 6 months ago. Fired for cause. Petty embezzlement. Expense account fraud. We didn't prosecute. Just got her to sign a paper and disappear. I see, I said, my heart sinking. That's not the worst of it, David said. I had it pull their internal emails. Mark Vance. He was involved. He helped her cover it up for months. But Eleanor, after she was fired, they stayed in contact. He was using his company email address. I held my breath. To do what? David. To talk to her new lawyers? To discuss her legal strategy? He sent them PDFs. Eleanor. Scans of what looked like your personal financial documents. He was asking questions about spousal rights and undue influence and gaining access to a parent's estate. He had used his company's resources to plan his attack on me. David? He's suspended. David cut me off, his voice like flint. Effective immediately. Pending a full internal investigation for gross misuse of company property and violations of his employment contract. He's done at Apex. Eleanor, I'm so sorry. Don't be, I said. You did me a great service. I hung up the phone and felt a profound sense of lightness. I hadn't just taken back my house. I hadn't just secured my money. I had just dismantled his entire support structure. He had no home, no access to money. And now, no job. I picked up the phone one last time. I dialed my sister in Oregon. Diane. Eleanor, is everything okay? Not really, I said. And for the first time in my life, I told her everything. The bank, the fraud, the secret marriage, the debt, the house, the job. I just let it all pour out. She listened, silent on the other end, until I was finished. Oh, Ellie, she whispered, her voice thick with shock. I'm on the next flight. I'll be there by morning. I hung up the phone, and as the reality of her words, I'll be there, sank in, the cold, hard fortress I had built around myself for the last 72 hours finally cracked. And for the first time since this began, I sat down and I cried. Not for my son, but because, for the first time in years, I was not, in fact, alone. I should have known it was too quiet. A cornered animal is a desperate one, and Brianna was now a cornered animal with nothing left to lose. My sister Diane had arrived, a comforting presence in the chaos, but her arrival would soon be twisted into something sinister. 2 weeks after I had sold the brownstone, a process server found me, not at the peninsula, but at the temporary luxury apartment I'd rented while I finalized the purchase of my new penthouse. He handed me a thick envelope. It wasn't a civil suit. Sarah had already confirmed they had no grounds for that. This was from family court. I opened it, and for the first time since I walked into that bank, a spear of genuine cold fear went straight through me. It was an emergency petition for conservatorship. They were claiming I was mentally incompetent. I sat down, my legs weak. The documents were slick, filled with legal jargon, but the accusations were clear. My son, Mark Vance, and his wife, Brianna Vance, were petitioning the court to take control of my person and my estate. They were claiming I was suffering from rapid onset cognitive decline, dementia, and extreme paranoia. They used every action I had taken to protect myself as evidence of my instability. The sudden, erratic sale of my long-time family home, the impulsive liquidation of my assets, the paranoid changing of my locks and phone number, and then the worst part. They claimed I was being unduly influenced by a new and opportunistic party, my own sister, Diane. They painted my sister, a woman who had flown across the country to support me, as a predator who had swooped in to isolate me and steal my money. They claim I'm confused, I said, my voice shaking as I read the words aloud to Sarah in her office an hour later. They have a witness, a doctor. Sarah took the document from my trembling hand. A doctor. Jason Riles, she read, her lip curling in disgust. A clinical psychologist. He's filed an affidavit. Let me guess. She scanned the page. Ah, yes. He's never met you. His professional opinion is based entirely on the tearful, concerned testimony of your son, Mark, who is gravely worried about your mental state. They're using Mark's words against me, I whispered, saying I'm unhinged. He's a quack. Eleanor, Sarah said, already typing on her computer. A hired gun Brianna must have had in her contacts, but the affidavit, combined with the petition from your concerned son, is just enough to trigger a mandatory hearing. What does that mean? It means, Sarah said, her face grim, that they have successfully humiliated you. The judge has, as is standard procedure in such cases, ordered a mandatory psychiatric evaluation by a court-appointed neutral third party. I felt sick. This wasn't a fight over money or a house anymore. This was a public, vile attack on my mind, my autonomy. They were trying to have me legally declared insane, a non-person, so they could get the money anyway. This was their final, desperate play. I was a 58-year-old woman, a retired executive, and I was being ordered by a court to prove I wasn't crazy, all because my son was a thief and his wife was a con artist. I'm scared. Sarah, I admitted, the words tasting like ash. This is... What if the judge believes them? Sarah stopped typing. She spun around in her high-backed leather chair and fixed me with a look so sharp it could have cut glass. They don't want to win. Eleanor, she said, her voice dropping. They know they won't win. They know you'll pass that evaluation with flying colours. This is a shakedown. This is a public, humiliating lawsuit designed to drag your name through the mud until you cry uncle and offer them a settlement to make them go away. So what do? We do not settle, Sarah said. Her eyes were bright, and for the first time, I saw the shark Harrison had promised me. They just made a fatal mistake. Eleanor, a catastrophic, amateur error in judgment. What? They've abandoned the civil fraud, which we could have handled privately. Instead, they've filed in family court. They have petitioned a judge. They have filed fraudulent, slanderous affidavits. They have brought their lies, their conspiracies, and their fake doctor into a court of law, on the official record. She smiled. It was not a nice smile. They just handed us a stage, a judge, and a court reporter. We are no longer just defending you. We are going on the offensive, and we are going to use the truth to bury them so deep they will never crawl out. The first step was the humiliation, the court-ordered psychiatric evaluation. I went alone, declining Sarah's offer to accompany me. The doctor was a woman my own age, Dr. Alani, a leading geriatric specialist with eyes that missed nothing. I did not go in defensively. I simply told her the truth, from the moment at the bank to the filing of the petition. I laid out the financial records, the legal steps I had taken, and the reasons for them. We spoke for 2 hours. At the end, she smiled, a thin, professional smile. "Mrs. Vance," she said, "my report to the court will state that you are not only perfectly competent, but in my professional opinion, you are exceptionally sharp and displaying a level of executive function I wish I saw in people half your age. What your son is doing is unconscionable. The court will have my report by tomorrow." That was the shield. Now, Sarah went about forging the sword. "We need to know who this woman is," Sarah said. She hired the best private investigator in the city, a man named Russo. He was a cliché, a tired, cynical ex-Chicago police detective who wore a trench coat in all weather and looked like he hadn't slept since 1995. But his reputation was stellar. He started with Brianna. "I'm not interested in her high school yearbook," Sarah instructed him. "I'm interested in her arrests, her debts, and her other marriages." Russo's report came back in 48 hours. It was worse than we thought. "She's not just a gambler, Mrs. Vance," Russo said, his voice a gravelly monotone as he sat in Sarah's office. "She's a predator. My analysis of her 4 previous marriages was correct, but Russo had found something Sarah hadn't. She has an active warrant, out of Sarasota, Florida, for felony elder fraud. She befriended a man, 80 years old, got him to sign over his house, and drained his accounts. The family pressed charges, but she skipped bail and fled the state. That's when she landed in Chicago and, 6 months later, met your son." My sister Diane, who was at the meeting, put her hand over her mouth. "And it gets better," Russo said. He'd also been digging into the Apex connection. "The CEO, David Miller, has been very cooperative." He slid a thin file across the desk. I cross-referenced the timelines. "Brianna's embezzlement at Apex wasn't a secret your son discovered. He was an active participant. He helped her fudge the numbers, reroute the expenses. He was in on it. And the emails we got, they show the quid pro quo." "The what?" I asked. "This for that," Russo translated. "The emails show him agreeing to help fix her money trouble at Apex. In exchange, she was going to use her experience to help him solve his own financial problem. The room was silent. He hadn't just been covering for a woman he loved. He had been an active conspirator in a financial crime, and his pay for that crime was to have her help him defraud his own mother. "Is there more?" Sarah asked, her voice tight. "Oh, yeah," Russo said. He pulled out a small digital audio recorder. "She's sloppy, arrogant, she likes to brag." He pressed play. A bar, loud music. And then Brianna's voice, high-pitched and slurred with alcohol, but unmistakably hers. "Total pushover. Mark. He's so wrapped around my finger it's pathetic. Just needs a little crying. And he'll sign anything to use against his senile old mom." A friend laughed. "Oh, yeah." Brianna continued. "Just wait. I'm about to cash in. We're talking a multi-million-dollar whale, and she's practically begging me to take it." Russo pressed stop. The silence that filled the room was heavy, toxic. While Russo had been digging in the dirt, Sarah had been gathering our allies. Mr. Harrison, the bank manager, had already given a sworn affidavit and volunteered to appear in court to testify to my immediate, decisive, and highly logical behavior on the day I discovered the fraud. David, the CEO of Apex, had also provided a full, unredacted, and legally certified copy of Mark and Brianna's entire internal email history, along with the details of Brianna's embezzlement. He was also on the witness list. We all sat in Sarah's conference room. My sister Diane, Sarah, and Russo. The reports, the emails, the Florida arrest warrant, the audio recording, and the glowing psychiatric evaluation were all spread out on the polished table. This was the ammunition, all of it. So, Sarah said, folding her hands, we have everything. They are walking into that hearing asking for a conservatorship, believing the worst-case scenario is that the judge says no. She looked at me, a wolf's smile on her face. They have no idea what's coming. We are not going in there to dismiss their petition. We are going in there to end this. We are going to hand-deliver them to the district attorney. The family courtroom was beige and smelled faintly of disinfectant and old coffee. It felt like a place of quiet desperation. Mark and Brianna walked in like they owned it. They had a lawyer with them, a man in a polyester suit that was too tight, who looked like he advertised on bus benches. He was smiling. They were smiling. They looked at me, sitting in the front row with Sarah and Diane, and their expressions were a perfect, practiced blend of pity and concern. They were brimming with the obnoxious confidence of people who have always gotten their way. Their lawyer clearly thought this was a simple case, a worried, loving son fighting to save his addled old mother from herself and her scheming sister. We are here on the petition of Mr. Mark Vance. The judge, a formidable older woman named Judge Maria Flores, began, requesting an emergency conservatorship over his mother, Eleanor Vance. Their lawyer, Mr. Glass, started. He called Mark to the stand. This was the bait, and Sarah let him take it. Mark settled into the chair, the picture of filial duty. He dabbed at a dry eye. It's just, she's not the same, he began, his voice thick with fake emotion. She's forgetting things. She's so agitated. When I got married, she just snapped. She sold our family home. She changed her will. She's being manipulated. I'm worried we're losing her. It was a masterful performance. Then came Brianna. She was even better, dressed in a modest, high-necked navy blue dress. She looked like a churchgoer. She cried softly, twisting a tissue in her hands. I just love Mark so much, she whispered. And I love his mother. I just want her to be safe. We only want to help her, to protect her. When she sold the house, we just knew she wasn't in her right mind. We're so scared for her. She looked at me, her eyes pleading. Eleanor, please, she whispered. We love you. Judge Flores looked at the two of them, her face an unreadable mask. Thank you, Ms. Jenkins, your witnesses. Thank you, Your Honor, Sarah said, standing up. She was all sharp angles and quiet authority. The defense calls our first witness, Dr. Evelyn Alani. A small flicker of confusion crossed Brianna's face. Their lawyer, Glass, looked at his notes. Dr. Alani took the stand. Dr. Alani, Sarah began, you are the geriatric specialist appointed by this very court to evaluate Mrs. Vance's mental competency. Are you not? I am. And what was the conclusion of your evaluation? That Mrs. Eleanor Vance is not only fully competent, but demonstrates exceptionally high executive function. She is clear, concise, logical, and under no one's influence. She is, in my professional opinion, one of the sharpest 58-year-old minds I have had the pleasure of evaluating. The blood visibly drained from Brianna's face. Glass started shuffling his papers. No further questions, Sarah said. The defense now calls Mr. Thomas Harrison. Harrison, the bank manager, took the stand. He was steady, professional, and radiated quiet integrity. Mr. Harrison, Sarah said, please describe your interaction with Mrs. Vance on the 15th of last month. Harrison calmly, clearly, and in damning detail, recounted the entire conversation, the discovery of the forged POU, the attempt to add Brianna to the accounts, and the specific request to access the home equity line of credit. And what was Mrs. Vance's reaction when she learned of this? She was shocked. Harrison said. Then, she was decisive. She immediately ordered a freeze on all assets to protect herself from the fraud. She was the definition of lucid. Glass was on his feet. Objection, fraud. This is speculation. Overruled. Judge Flores snapped, her eyes narrowing. It is testimony to a direct observation. Sit down. Mr. Glass. The defense calls David Miller, CEO of Apex Solutions. David walked in, his suit worth more than Glass's entire legal education. He looked furious. David proceeded to present, under oath, the internal investigation, the embezzlement by Brianna, the active, documented conspiracy by Mark, using his company email to defraud his own mother. Objection! Glass shrieked, jumping up. This is a family court. This is irrelevant. It's prejudicial. It is highly relevant. Counsel. Judge Flores thundered, leaning forward in her seat. It speaks directly to the motives of the petitioner. I want to hear all of this. Your objection is overruled. You will sit down and be silent until she is finished. Mark looked green. He was staring at Brianna with a new, terrified expression. Finally, Sarah said, her voice dropping. The defense calls Investigator Russo. Russo took the stand. He looked bored. He recited his credentials, and then Sarah led him through the evidence. Mr. Russo, in your investigation of the petitioner, Brianna Vance, did you discover any outstanding legal issues? I did, Russo said, his voice flat. She has an active, outstanding bench warrant from Sarasota County, Florida. Case number 2023 F881. Felony charges for elder fraud, grand theft, and exploitation of a vulnerable adult. There was a collective gasp in the courtroom. Glass's jaw was on the floor. Mark had gone completely white. But Brianna wasn't looking at the judge. She wasn't looking at Mark. She was looking at the door. She bolted. In one fluid motion, she shot up from her chair and sprinted for the courtroom exit. She's running, Diane yelled, but the two bailiffs at the door, already alerted by the mention of a warrant, were faster. They grabbed her, one on each arm, as she fought and clawed at the doorway. Get off me! She screamed, the modest, tearful wife vanishing, replaced by a snarling, cornered animal. It's a lie. You can't hold me. Hold her. Judge Flores's voice boomed across the courtroom, cutting through Brianna's screams. The bailiffs had her, one on each arm, and were half-dragging, half-carrying her back toward the defense table. That warrant is from a sister state, and she is now in custody. She is also to be held on charges of perjury before this court. Sit her down." They forced her into the chair, where she promptly put her head down on the table and began to sob, her shoulders heaving. It was over. And then Mark broke. He hadn't run. He just crumbled. He stared at his wife, at the bailiffs, at the judge, his face a mask of abject, pathetic terror. His lawyer, Glass, was frantically stuffing papers into his briefcase, trying to physically distance himself from his clients. Mark turned, his eyes wild, and looked at me. He was pleading, but not with the judge. With me. Mum, please, I didn't know, I swear. I didn't know about Florida. She lied to me. She lied about everything, Mum. You have to believe me. Please." He was crying, big, gulping sobs, the same tears he had used in the hotel lobby. But this time, they were real. Not tears of remorse. Tears of pure, selfish fear. "She lied to me," he wailed again. "Your Honor." Sarah's voice cut through his performance like a scalpel. "If Mr. Vance is claiming he was an unknowing participant, the defense has one final piece of evidence we'd like to play." She held up the small digital audio recorder. "This was taken by investigator Russo 2 nights ago, at a bar in River North. The voice you will hear is that of the petitioner, Brianna Vance." She pressed play. The courtroom filled with the tinny sound of loud music and, underneath it, Brianna's sharp, bragging, drunken voice. "Total pushover. Mark. He's so wrapped around my finger it's pathetic, just needs a little crying. And he'll sign anything to use against his senile old mom." Mark's head snapped up. His wailing stopped, his mouth open. Brianna's voice continued, slurred and triumphant. "That idiot Mark believes everything I say. He thinks he's saving me. I'm the one saving him. I'm about to cash in. We're talking a multi-million-dollar whale, and she's practically begging me to take it." Sarah pressed stop. The silence that rushed back in was heavier, more profound than any sound. Mark was no longer crying. He was staring at his wife's bowed head, his face a sickening shade of grey. The humiliation, the public unmasking of him as not just a criminal but a fool, a pathetic idiot, was absolute. He had been played just as thoroughly as I had. He turned, but he didn't look at Brianna. He looked at me, and in his eyes, I saw no shame, no remorse, only a bottomless, black rage. "You," he screamed, his voice cracking, pointing a shaking finger at me. "This is your fault." His lawyer, halfway out of his chair, tried to grab him. "Mark, no." "It's always been your fault," Mark shrieked, his face turning a dark, mottled red. "You and your money, your control. Always lording it over me. Your rules, your house, your company. You never gave me anything, not really nothing that was ever just mine." He was unhinged. All the years of perceived slights, all his own failures, boiling over in one last, spectacular act of self-destruction. I had been sitting this whole time, now, slowly. I stood up. I did not look at my son. I looked directly at Judge Flores. "Your Honor," I said, my voice perfectly calm. For the record, I paid for his entire 4-year education at Northwestern. I paid the security deposit and the first 6 months' rent on his first apartment. I paid off both of his car loans when he defaulted. I got him his job at Apex, a job he held for 5 years. When my son says I never gave him anything, what he means, Your Honor, is that I never gave him everything. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear the fluorescent lights buzz. I turned my head and looked, for the last time, at the thing that had been my son. He looked back at me, his face a ruin of hate. "I hate you," he hissed. I held his gaze. "I know. Mark," I said, and the words were just simple, tired facts. And I accept that. "Enough!" Judge Flores slammed her gavel down, the sound cracking like a gunshot. "That is enough. The petition for conservatorship is hereby dismissed, with extreme prejudice. I find the petitioner's claims to be not just baseless, but malicious, fraudulent, and a gross abuse of this court. I am, effective immediately, referring this entire file, including the sworn, perjured testimony of Mr. Mark Vance and Mrs. Brianna Cole Vance, to the District Attorney's Office for a full criminal investigation into charges of conspiracy to commit fraud, forgery, and perjury." The aftermath was swift and brutal, but it was no longer my battle. Brianna was held on the perjury charge and the Florida warrant. The state of Florida began extradition proceedings immediately. She was a con artist who had finally run out of marks. Between the old charges in Sarasota and the new ones in Illinois for fraud and perjury, she was facing years in prison. She disappeared into the legal system, a black hole of her own making. Mark was fired from Apex, of course, the same day as the hearing. With the evidence from the company and the court, the district attorney's office formally charged him as a co-conspirator. He was facing his own felony counts. He did the only thing a coward could do. He took a deal. To avoid prison time, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, received 5 years of probation, and was ordered to pay restitution not just to me, for the legal fees, but to Apex for his role in the embezzlement. It was a sum he would never, ever be able to repay. I sold the brownstone in 1 week. I took the first clean, all-cash offer that came in, not even bothering to negotiate. I just wanted it gone. I never spoke to Mark again. I received a few desperate, pleading letters from his new, court-appointed lawyer. I forwarded them all to Sarah, who handled them. The communication was cold, legal, and final. The trust was ironclad. The new will was filed. He was, in every way that mattered, gone from my life. 6 months passed. I stood in my new home, a penthouse, high on the Gold Coast, wrapped in glass. The sun was just beginning to touch the edge of Lake Michigan, painting the sky in pale shades of rose and grey. The apartment was bright, modern, and spotlessly clean. It was filled with new furniture, new art, and new locks on a door that was guarded 24 hours a day. It was mine. My phone rang, resting on the sleek quartz countertop. I picked it up. It was my sister. "You're up early," Diane said, her voice warm from Oregon. "I like the sunrise here," I said. "Well, I was just calling to see. The kids are already asking what Aunt Ellie wants for Thanksgiving. Do you think you'd be willing to fly out? We'd love to have you. We could make a real holiday of it." I looked out at the vast, open water. I thought of my nieces, of a loud, warm, messy house filled with the smell of turkey and the sound of laughter. A family I had not made time for. A family that had been waiting for me all along. "I would love that," I said, and a small, strange feeling pulled at the corners of my mouth. It was a smile. A real one. I would love that very much. I was rebuilding. Not my finances. They were secure. I was rebuilding my family. But this time, on my own terms. The money that would have been Mark's. The inheritance he had tried to steal before I was even dead. was now funding the Michael Vance Scholarship Foundation, a trust I'd established in my late husband's name to send bright kids from poor neighborhoods to college. A legacy of creation, not destruction. My assistant had left the mail on the counter. Bills, invitations, and one letter. It was thin, on cheap paper, with a return address from the county jail. The handwriting was his. Mark. He must have violated his probation. I picked it up. I held it in my hands for a long time, feeling the weight of it, which was almost nothing. I saw the desperate, angry, pleading words I knew were inside. I saw the excuses, the blame, the hatred. I saw the void. I walked to my new home office, a small, bright room with a view of the city. I did not open the letter. I fed it into the new, high-capacity shredder. The machine whined for a moment, and then he was gone, reduced to a pile of meaningless, cross-cut scraps. I had lost a son, but I had reclaimed my name, my dignity, and my future. I had found myself. I walked back to the kitchen, picked up my coffee cup, and watched the sun break free of the horizon. The revenge wasn't sweet. It was just necessary. It was finished. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I'd love to know where you're listening from. So please comment below and let's share our thoughts. Be sure to subscribe to Grandma's Family Diary, like this video, and give us a little extra support by hitting that hype button so more people can hear this story.